Welcome everybody to another GYLS momentum session. And not just another one, this is basically the last official guest speaker. We have today Tyler Johnston, who was one of the first people that I met on first GYLS. He was going as a youth coach and I was going as a coach, so we were going to be kind of on the same team. And I didn't know anyone, obviously, when I was going for my first time. I think we actually flew together, right, Tyler? Because he's actually from Canada too. One of the only other session leaders from Canada, other than Brody and myself. I'm pretty sure I don't know anyone else.
Just another one. This is basically
if you have it open, Tyler, it'll also play in the background.
Yeah, I just
That always happens. Don't even worry. Anyways, Tyler is going to talk about health and fitness today, and it's not something that he just read in a book. This guy lives it every day in the gym. He's living proof. This guy competes for fitness competitions. So you're learning from someone who's actually doing it, getting it in the gym. So for anyone who has questions or comments, post them in the Facebook group, in the post that's pinned to the top. Without further ado, here's Tyler.
Awesome. Thank you, Sergio. How's it going, everyone? Like Sergio said, fitness is something that's, fitness and health, nutrition is something that's a major part of my life. It's something that I do every day. I'm actually like a trainer, nutrition coach, all that too. So, and like Sergio mentioned, I compete. So I know a little bit about, fitness and nutrition and that. So if you guys have any sort of questions or anything that come up throughout this session, just feel free to post them on the Facebook page, and I'll try and, do my best to answer everything. But today's topic is basically, it's going to be covering flexible dieting. And so what this is, it's not a specific diet per se. It's more so a way of eating, like a way of just kind of eating better and, without having to restrict yourself. So, if any of you have ever tried dieting in the past or, been on a diet in the past, I'm sure many of you have. A lot of the times you'll get to a point where, you feel restricted, or you feel, that you just either can't or don't want to maintain eating, clean, or, eating the same sort of foods every single day, and it's tough. And, eventually you kind of fall off track with that because it's not really sustainable long term. And so flexible dieting is kind of a way around that. It's more focused on macronutrients, so the amount of protein, carbs, and fats that you consume each day, rather than a specific, type of food. So essentially, instead of having, a list of these are 10 foods that are, clean foods and you can only eat these every day, which is, what most diets do. They restrict you to certain foods at certain times. Flexible dieting, you can eat literally anything you want. You just have to pay attention to the macronutrients in the food. So we're going to go through that. I'm going to take you through exactly, like how you can get started with this and how it works a bit more. But I just wanted to give you kind of a broad overview of, what it's all about. And this is something that it allows you to be, like it says, a lot more flexible with your diet, and it's a lot more sustainable in the long term. So, this isn't something that you can only stick to for like 30 days and then you find yourself crashing and, binging and gaining back all the weight you lost. This is something that you can implement and, keep going for the rest of your life, kind of thing. Like, you can keep it going long term. And that's what really produces the, the end results, the big improvements and the transformations. So, so why do, traditional diets fail? Why is it that other diets, typically you can't really stick with long term. There's two main reasons for that. The first is that they're too absolute and we expect perfection with our diets. So just to kind of explain that further, when we go on a diet, say we want to lose 10 pounds, or even if we want to gain 10 pounds, what we do is say, the way I'm eating right now isn't working all that well, so I need to start dieting. And we come up with these specific set of rules for our diet. And a lot of the times we make these rules really strict. So, you hear about diets where, every meal they're only eating chicken and broccoli and rice or something like that. And that's every meal every day, or they're having 6 egg whites for breakfast with some fruit, and then chicken broccoli, maybe some fish or some cottage cheese or something. And it works to some extent. There's all these different diets out there. There's, the paleo diet, the Atkins diet, all these different things, Weight Watchers, whatever. And they all work to some extent. But, the problem is they're not really maintainable long term. If you have this really specific, strict set of rules, it's a lot more difficult to maintain that in the future. So what happens when, something happens and, we fall off track or we break one of our rules that we set for ourselves, we feel like, we screwed up, the whole diet's ruined, and then we go crazy and we binge and we overeat and we just completely fall off track with the diet. And so with flexible dieting, you can work around that. So by focusing on your macronutrients, you realize, okay, you had one day that, you kind of slipped up. You can adjust for that for the following days, and then you can just get right back on track. You can keep going. It's not, you don't have this super strict set of specific rules that you have to follow. And then if you break one of them, you feel like all hope is lost. So that's, the first reason that diets fail. We're too absolute. We expect perfection. We're not robots, we're humans. A lot of, even a lot of our eating and that is emotional. So there's a lot of psychological things tied into that. And yeah, just a lot of our eating, comes from different emotions and stuff like that too. Certain foods we eat because they make us feel good or we like the taste. So it's unrealistic to think that you can just completely cut out all junk food all the time. If you've been eating that for the past 15 years and, you say, okay, today I'm going to stop eating junk food and never eat that ever again my entire life. It's not necessarily that realistic for everyone to just do that. So by taking a more flexible approach, you don't get stuck in that kind of rigid mindset in those restrictions. And, if you fall off track, you get right back on, you keep going, and it's, it's not as big of a deal as you make it out to be, as long as you get back on track and, keep progressing. So that's the first rule. The second, or the first reason that traditional diets fail, the second is focusing on the short term. So just focusing on the short term. There's so many of these diets that are, 30 days to lose 30 pounds, or, drop 4 inches in 10 days or whatever. The media puts out these things because they sell, because generally as human beings, we're impatient and we want results yesterday. So, all these crash diets and stuff like that are 30 days to lose 30 pounds, that's clearly, it's not maintainable. If you're, cutting out so much food that you're dropping a pound a day for 30 days, what's the likelihood that you're going to be able to keep eating that little amount of food and feel, full and satisfied in that? It's not very likely. So with most of these diets, they're focused too much on the short term rather than, just improving your nutrition and improving your diet for the long term, because that's what really matters. It's improving your nutrition habits, it's improving your lifestyle to be healthier, to have, more energy, more strength, be leaner, have that body, that beach body that you want to get, whatever it is for you. We all have our own reasons. And so with flexible dieting, it focuses more on the long term. It's not something that you just do for 30 days and then you quit. And it's not something that you just do to, get beach ready or whatever. You can use it for that. You can get amazing results with it. And you can get awesome short-term results, but it's a lot easier to maintain long-term. So it's a lot more sustainable because you're not restricted to a specific set of foods or, those rigid rules. You can still eat all the foods that you like. Even if, some of you might be saying, well, eating all the foods I love, I love chocolate cake and donuts. And with flexible dieting, you can still eat those. Like, it's obviously you can't eat those for every single meal, but I'll explain to you, how you can work those in and how it really won't make that much of an impact in the long term. And that's, I don't know if any of you have, gone through like fitness Instagram pages or, something like that, and you see all of these like crazy like cheat meals and whatever, like big like piles of ice cream and that. And, you wonder like, how the heck can they eat that and, still be in shape and look amazing like they do like on stage and on magazines and stuff. And a lot of that you can do through flexible dieting. So we're going to get further into that, but just to recap, the two main reasons why traditional dieting fails: being too absolute, expecting perfection, and focusing only on the short term, focusing on these crash diets that aren't really sustainable. So let's move into flexible dieting. So like I said before, it focuses on macronutrients. So there's 3 of them, and they make up the bulk of our diet. So it's protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Those are the 3 macros. And each of those has a caloric value. So each of those has calories associated with them in foods. So protein and carbs are both 4 calories per gram, and fat is 9 calories per gram. So fat's a lot more dense in calories. So that's why, typically you want to keep your fats a bit lower just because they have so many calories with them. But basically focusing on just these numbers, your protein, carbs, and fats, that's what's going to allow you to change your body composition, either build muscle, lose body fat, lose weight, whichever is your primary goal. And so I just want to move on and kind of touch on, how does weight loss or weight gain occur? So essentially, your body, based on your height, your age, your gender, your weight, all these different things, your body has a maintenance level of calories. So that just means the amount of calories you have to eat every day in order to stay the exact same weight you're at. And so basically, in order to lose weight, you have to reduce your calories and be in a caloric deficit, which just means you're burning more calories each day than you're putting in, kind of thing. So just to explain how you would go about figuring this out, there's lots of there's like a few different formulas in that for calculating, what's your maintenance calorie level. But for simplicity's sake, you can just Google, a maintenance calorie calculator or something like that. Even just weight loss calorie calculator, something along those lines. And most of them will be sophisticated enough to, give you a pretty accurate calculation of how many calories you should have each day. And so I think we have a question coming up.
Yeah, so we just got a question posted on Facebook from Rachel, and it's basically, so although you can eat donuts, pizza, and ice cream and clearly achieve an aesthetic goal, is it better to get those macros and calories from whole foods, fruits and vegetables, rice, unprocessed foods, etc., or does it not matter at all in your opinion? So basically, the caloric deficit, does it matter where it comes from, I guess is what she's trying to say.
Right. I'm making my way to that. I knew that was going to come up.
If you're going to cover it, then just roll with what you're doing, and then we'll see if the question still is there.
Yeah, and like the answer in short is, and to some extent it does matter, to some extent it doesn't. So I'll explain that further. I'm just getting through that. So I just want to explain a bit more about the difference between like calories and macros, and then I'll touch on that, and then we'll move on to how you guys can actually get started and implement this. So yeah, so I'll just kind of keep going through. I should answer that question, and then if not, just let me know again and I'll be sure to cover it. So just getting back to the whole weight loss, weight gain. So essentially you have a maintenance level of calories. So say that your maintenance level is 2,000 calories. So if you want to lose weight, basically, if you want to lose about 1 pound per week, you have to cut out 500 calories a day. So in research, they've kind of come up with, 1 calorie is equal to about, or 1 pound, sorry, of body weight is equal to about 3,500 calories. So if you take out 500 calories a day times 7 days in a week, that means, essentially you'll lose a pound a week. And the same thing goes for weight gain. So if you take your maintenance level, say it's 2,000, you add 500 calories, that's 2,500. So that's essentially how weight loss and weight gain occurs. So it's basically just your calorie level that affects that, for the most part. Obviously there's some other things that play into weight loss and that sort of thing in terms of your genes and all that, but for simplicity's sake, calories are basically what determine weight loss, weight gain, or staying the same. So to calculate that, again, you can just Google calorie calculator, enter in your body stats, and most of them will give you a good idea of like your maintenance calories. If you want to lose weight, I recommend 1 to 2 pounds weight loss is a healthy rate. So I wouldn't go any further than 2 pounds a week in terms of how quickly you should lose. And then for weight gain, if you're looking to put on muscle, I would say 0.5 pound to 1 pound a week would be a good amount to maximize muscle gain while minimizing fat gain. So that's that. Now let's move on to how do calories or how do macros play into this whole calorie thing. So like I said before, these macros each have a certain amount of calories with them. So essentially calories affect weight loss or weight gain, but the macros that make up those calories, so the amount of protein, carbs, and fats that make up that calorie amount, that's what affects your body composition. So that's what will either build muscle or build fat, burn muscle or burn fat kind of thing. So calories affect weight loss, weight gain. Macros affect body composition. So either 190 pounds with a lot of extra body fat kind of thing, or 190 pounds super lean, muscular, all that. So that's the difference there. And now to kind of address Rachel's question, about the source of those macros. So there is somewhat of a difference between foods, being that some are more nutrient dense than others. So some have more micronutrients, which are like your vitamins and minerals. And so some are, healthier in that sense, that they have more of those micronutrients and things like fiber. And then some are less nutrient dense, so they don't have as many, vitamins and minerals and things like that that are beneficial to your health. So, things like, ice cream and donuts and all those sort of processed foods and that sort of thing. So with this, I like to follow like the 80-20 rule. And most research suggests that as well. So as long as you're getting, 80% of your food comes from, more wholesome sources, more nutritious foods, things like, vegetables and fruits and, whole grains and healthy, like lean protein sources, that sort of thing, like chicken, tuna, salmon, all those kinds of foods, the more nutrient dense ones, if that makes up about 80% of your diet, then the other 20% can essentially be whatever you want. And so that's why you'll see, things on like Instagram and that, and like fitness pages where, they go, this person looks amazing, they're shredded and ripped and muscular and that, and then they'll go and eat like 6 donuts and like look like they didn't gain a pound. You can do that to some extent. Like you can still eat all the foods that you like, all your favorite foods. You just have to have them in moderation. Obviously, you can't expect to, lose body fat and be ripped and have a 6-pack and be eating 12 donuts every single morning. But with flexible dieting, with working them into your macros, you can still have, a piece of chocolate cake here and there, and it really won't affect your progress in terms of like your fitness or your body composition at all. So, even when I'm getting ready for a fitness contest, like a show, I still have like cupcakes and stuff like that here and there. I hope that kind of answered the question. I think we might have gotten another one. Do we have another question coming up, or? Yeah.
Yeah, we got one. We got one from Juan.
Yeah.
That I'm currently sitting around 9 or 10% body fat and want to get down to be more toned and shredded, probably around 7 or 8. Number one, what's your body fat percentage if you want to share? And number two, how do you tweak a diet to lose only body fat but keep the muscle? Thanks.
All right. Awesome question. So, well, to answer what I'm at, I just competed last weekend, so I'm around 4 or 5% body fat right now.
What were you at your competition, like at the peak? How far will you let it go? Like, will you hit like 3? Like, is that even healthy?
I was probably around 4.
That's intense.
It really depends. Like we take into consideration, how I'm feeling and my energy levels and emotions and all that sort of thing. So, we kind of base it on how it's going in the moment. But yeah, usually around like 4% when I'm on stage. But to get back to that, so to basically just to lose body fat specifically and minimize muscle loss, or maintain or build muscle while you're losing body fat, it comes down to the ratio of the macronutrients. So the percentage of the protein that you're having, your percentage of carbs, and your percentage of fat, and then also how quickly or slowly you're losing the weight. Because if you try to lose weight too quickly, you're going to end up burning a lot of fat, but then you'll also burn muscle mass as well. So you're going to lose muscle that way. So if you want to minimize muscle loss while losing body fat, you have to take a steady approach. Like you have to do it really gradual and progress slowly. You have to be patient with it, because if you try and jump into it too quickly, you're going to lose your strength. You're going to start kind of burning away your muscle mass, and it's kind of the opposite of what you want to happen when you're trying to get lean and muscular. You don't want to be losing all your muscle too. So yeah, the best way to do that is to make sure you're getting enough protein and carbs, and then taking a gradual approach. So I'm going to get into that a little bit more about the different like macro ratios and stuff as we get closer. I think we have another question.
I've actually gone from me, yeah. So you said on stage you're at 4%. On average, on a normal day, where are you at roughly? And in order to look shredded, like healthily, I guess, where do you want to be at? Because a lot of like the average population is around like, I don't know, 12, 15, 18, like way up there.
Yeah.
So like where are you at normally, and where's the number where you begin to look shredded?
Okay. So
And for guys and girls too, because we got girls watching too. Obviously, girls are a way higher number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like to stay pretty lean year round. So I'll typically stay probably around 10%, or like just under. But that would probably be the lowest you'd want to kind of maintain year round, around like 10%. Any lower, and it's really hard to build muscle or maintain your strength, or like build strength, that sort of thing. And it's harder to have like good energy levels. For women, this would 10% would probably be closer to like 15 to 18 for women. So women just naturally have higher body fat percentage. In terms of kind of the most healthy range, I would say would be around like 10 to 12%. Probably closer to 12%, to be honest, in terms of having your like max performance and like for sports and that sort of thing. Yeah, so probably 10 to 12% would be a really good healthy body fat percentage for men. For women, yeah, around like 18 to 20% would be healthy. With women getting lower in their body fat percentage, it affects your bodies a lot more. There's a lot more kind of complications as you get a lot leaner, especially in terms of like things with like your hormones and like even like your menstrual cycle and that sort of thing. That can, if you get too low a body fat, that can stop. And most girls that are competing, that happens with them. So it's not typically the most healthy thing to get to that lean of a body composition. And most athletes in that you see on stage, even if they're like 3, 4, 5% body fat, they're not like that year round. Like I said, like I try to stay around 10%, and I like that body fat percentage for myself personally. But in terms of a healthy body fat, around 12% for men would be good. Around 20% for women as well. But again, you have to take into consideration how you feel, and how what body fat percentage you feel the best at, what you have the most energy at and the most strength and that sort of thing, and kind of base it off that too, because everyone's different. some people won't be able to maintain a really low body fat percentage year round and still feel energetic or strong. So you have to kind of take in your personal considerations as well. So.
Okay, we got one more question. We got a lot of curious people on this one.
Yeah, no, that's
one
good.
more. You can keep it going with what you're going on. Rachel again, is it possible to get shredded and lose body fat while eating high carbs and low fat?
Yes, absolutely. That is, the whole low carb thing is, I don't really like it, to be honest. Carbohydrates are your number one energy source when performing anaerobic activity. So any high intensity activity, like sports or lifting weights or just anything that you have to use a lot of energy all at once, you need carbohydrates for that. Also, carbs are stored in your muscles. So you have glycogen stores in your muscles, and that's basically just carb stores within your muscles. So if you're not eating enough carbs, those are going to be completely depleted, and your muscles flatten out, and you begin to lose strength, and you can't keep up high intensity. So if you're looking to kind of maintain your strength and you're wanting to be, like muscular and strong and get lean and ripped, you need carbs. It's your primary energy source. So if someone is on, like the ketogenic diet, which is super low carbs to the point that your body produces ketones that start to eat away the fat, it's going to be really, really, really tough to perform the intensity of exercise you need to build muscle, and you'll probably find yourself losing a lot of strength as well. So it definitely is possible, and I think it's more of a healthy approach to include a lot of carbohydrates and like mostly healthy sources in that. Again, like the 80-20 rule, but it's definitely possible, and it'll depend on a few things. Like I'll kind of touch on that when I get to the macro ratios, but again, each person's going to respond a little bit differently. Some people can basically absorb or like utilize more carbs than others, and some of them can't. Like, to make it as simple as possible. But yeah, so again, there's going to be some personal factors that play into it, but it's definitely possible to get lean having high carbs. Actually, carbs are the biggest portion of my diet all year round. Even when I'm getting ready for a show, carbs are like the highest amount of calories that I consume. So, yeah.
I actually have a question relating to what we're now talking about that I just thought of. So I remember in your example earlier, you said just on average, and as an example, someone may have like a 2,000 calorie day, like maintenance.
Yep.
If you lower your thing, like you're trying to lose weight, you're not going to eventually lose like half your body weight and disappear. You're going to get to a point where, like, I guess the question is, can you get to a point where you lower your maintenance level and you can actually healthily be, let's say, at 1,800 or 1,500 or something?
Yeah.
Or can you just be at 2,000, lower your thing to lose some weight, and then go back to 2,000 since that's your body's maintenance? That's kind of the question. To lose weight, do you lower your thing and then bring it back to your maintenance, or do you consistently lower it and stay lowered? That's kind of the question.
Yeah. Actually, I wasn't going to dive too much into that because it'd be better to kind of fully explain like how the metabolism works. But essentially, say you're 180 pounds or whatever, and say your maintenance level is 2,000 calories. Just for this example, it's probably not accurate, but so say your maintenance level is 2,000 calories. You want to lose a pound a week, so you would start eating 1,500 calories, and that'll allow you, like, you'll be able to lose weight at that for a certain period of time, but as you lose more weight, your maintenance level decreases. So you need less food to maintain that new weight. So that's why some people, they start dieting, they cut out, say 500 calories, they start losing weight, and then they feel like they hit this plateau, and so then they cut out a lot more calories, and then they lose a little bit more, and then they hit another plateau, and then eventually they get to the point where they're eating nothing at all and they're not losing any weight. Essentially, your metabolism likes to stay where it's at, so it likes to keep you at a certain range for your weight. Say it would be within 5 pounds or something of where you're at right now. So as you begin to lose weight, your metabolism starts to slow down with that when you have fewer calories. And so that's why you'll get to a point where you're eating less food, but you're not losing any more weight. And there's ways to actually build your metabolism up to keep your metabolism burning higher and still keep losing fat. Take a little bit more explaining to kind of go through it all, but I did actually write a book on all of this just to give you guys a heads up, and it does explain all of this stuff in there. So that that's coming. But yeah, so essentially, there's ways that you can keep your metabolism burning higher so that you don't have to drop your calories too low, and you can keep losing fat. It essentially comes to kind of cycling your carbs or cycling different macros. So some days having higher amounts of food and some days having lower amounts. And that helps to kind of temporarily bump the metabolism up to keep it burning more while you continue to lose weight. And then there's other things like refeeds where you have a lot more calories, say like once a week or once every other week. And that just kind of helps, again, to bring the metabolism up so that you can keep losing weight without dropping down to like 0 calories a day kind of thing. And a lot of people have that problem. They try to cut out their calories too much, too quickly. They try to take like the extreme approach, thinking, more is always better. So, if I want to lose a lot of weight, I'll just eat, 700 calories a day. And that's not enough for your body to even properly function. Like just doing its regular functions without moving or doing anything, your body uses a lot of calories and a lot of energy just to perform its daily functions. So if you're not providing your body enough calories, your metabolism just crashes and it stops burning fat. And that's why you get people that are having almost no food and they're not able to lose weight. It's because they've essentially damaged their metabolism and they've dropped things out too low too quickly, and it takes a lot of time to slowly build the metabolism back up. And the way you build the metabolism back up is by slowly increasing the amount of calories you consume. But hopefully that kind of touched on it. So it's possible to as you lose weight, your maintenance level of calories is going to decrease because your metabolism is going to slow down, but it is possible to build your metabolism up so that you can maintain your lower weight and still be able to eat more food, essentially. All right. Is there any other questions before I jump into it, or?
Well, Rachel said, "Thank you, Tyler. You're awesome." Just a comment. And then we have one from Jeff.
Yeah.
I asked him to rephrase it because I don't know if you can fully like answer. It's more of like asking your opinion. But he said, "What's your opinion on Pete Sisko's books regarding muscle building as a direct result of macro dieting?" So I don't know if you're familiar with Pete Sisko. If you're not, I asked him to rephrase it so that you can answer. But if you are, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Pete Sisko. I haven't read his books, so I don't know
I
if you
think he's
can.
the static contraction guy. I'm pretty sure. I think that, but I thought that was like working out, not dieting. But yeah, I asked him to rephrase it to an actual question, so hopefully he gets that soon. I know he's watching on his phone, and I think he's driving while he's watching. So, way to get on here, Jeff. You're awesome. Huang asked
Uh,
another one. Huang
yeah,
asked,
if you can kind of rephrase that in terms of like, the principles that he states or whatever, then I can try and answer it that way. But
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Huang asked, do you incorporate simple carbs into your diet, or do you purely have complex carbs? Is there a benefit to having simple carbs?
I do have simple carbs. The benefit of simple carbs is they're digested a lot quicker. They're absorbed a lot quicker. So they basically just go straight to the bloodstream, give you that quick boost of energy. There's a few times when that's, yeah, question?
Maybe for us who don't know, like myself, what simple and complex carbs are, it might be worth
Okay.
explaining to the general
So,
public.
right. So a complex carb is something that's it's basically broken down a lot slower. So something like a whole grain, as opposed to a simple carb like sugar or honey or syrup or something like that. So the main difference is basically a complex carb is something that's absorbed slower and digested slower. They're usually more like starchy. And then simple carbs are, things like sugar, most fruits, like syrups and honey and that sort of thing. Um, and so, yeah, for most of my main kind of meals throughout the day, like lunch and dinner, that sort of thing, it's mostly complex carbs, so like sweet potato or sometimes some like Ezekiel bread or more complex carbs like that. But I definitely include simple carbs too. There are some benefits to having simple carbs at certain times. One being, well, if you want just like a quick boost of energy, simple carbs are really good for that. So, if you're feeling kind of sluggish, your blood sugar might be pretty low. So if you have, some fruit or, something that's a really simple carb that's going to be digested right away, that'll give you that energy rush. Also, right after a workout, including some simple carbs with a good protein source actually helps to get the protein and the nutrients into the muscles quicker because it like gets right into the bloodstream. So it helps with that. But again, it's kind of like the 80-20 thing. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't make a huge difference if you're having mostly complex carbs or mostly simple carbs. Um, your body doesn't necessarily discern between 10 grams of carbs from syrup and 10 grams of carbs from a baked potato. It simply breaks down the macronutrients in the body and uses them for its functions. So I should have actually mentioned that earlier, but basically, if you have, say you go and get a double cheeseburger and it's like 40 carbs, 30 fat, and like 20 protein, something along those lines. And say you've got that double cheeseburger in this hand. This one you have like an avocado, a chicken breast, and some like brown rice. And if they equal the same amount of macronutrients, they're going to do the same thing in terms of changing your body composition in the long run. So if they have the same macros in them, it's basically going to do the same thing in terms of, you know, your muscle gain, your fat loss, that sort of thing. But like we mentioned before, certain foods are more nutrient dense, so they have more vitamins and minerals in that. So obviously you'd be getting more essential like vitamins and minerals and antioxidants from, you know, the avocado and chicken breast and that sort of thing, rather than a double cheeseburger. But if those macros are the same, in the, you know, and that's not, you know, you're not having just a double cheeseburger for every single meal, you're still getting those nutritious foods. It's going to do the same thing in terms of your body composition. So that's how you can basically eat whatever you want and still, you know, achieve your fitness and health goals. So I think, did that answer it? Another question? Yeah.
I think that answered that one. Yeah, incorporating simple and complex carbs.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about macronutrients and like what you just said with the cheeseburger and the avocado sandwich having the same composition of carbs, fats, and proteins. Basically, do the same thing to your body's composition, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the micronutrients aren't going to be the same in a cheeseburger, like a greasy bacon double cheeseburger, and like an avocado salad thing or something, where
Yeah.
the macros are the same. So
Yeah.
in a situation where the macros are technically the same, but the micros are vastly different, does that affect, like, do micronutrients have an effect on your body composition? Because obviously they have effect on your internal health, like your pH balance, right? Like a cheeseburger is
Yeah.
going to make you really acid.
Mm-hmm.
And like your heart health, your brain health, your blood's health, for like preventing diseases and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can talk about micronutrients and how
Yeah.
that will affect it.
Yeah, so like micronutrients are, you know, the vitamins and minerals. So they essentially keep your body functioning properly. So if you're deficient in any sort of like vitamin or mineral, that's obviously going to affect your body, because it's going to affect like all the functions within your body. So you do still have to pay attention to that. And, you know, a lot of people kind of have started using like flexible dieting, or, you know, it's also known as like if it fits your macros, as an excuse to, you know, eat like ice cream and chips and pop and all this stuff every single day. And that makes up like the majority of their foods, because they say, oh, well, it's the same amount of macros, so, you know, it's, I'm getting the same results in terms of my physique. But if, you know, you're only eating the junk food, even if it's the same macros, obviously that's going to affect your health in the long run. You might be able to achieve the same physique goals or like body composition goals and look good, but, you know, if you look awesome on the outside and your insides are like rotting away, it, you know, it doesn't really make sense. So that's why I kind of say to follow that like 80-20 rule. So get like 80% of your diet from more nutrient dense foods, you know, healthier sources. You know, healthy foods are still important. And vitamins and minerals are super important for every, you know, every little function in your body. If you're deficient in like one single vitamin or mineral, it can totally throw off your energy levels, your strength levels, all these sort of things, and just like cause a catalyst. So you want to be sure you're getting enough vitamins or minerals, but you can still work in, you know, if you want to have a cheeseburger once a week, that's okay. If you work that into your macros and you're still getting enough, you know, enough healthy food sources, then there's nothing wrong with that. And I personally believe, and a lot of others believe, that it actually helps with like your mental well-being as well. Because there's only so long you can restrict yourself to not eat foods that you're craving, or, you know, not eat foods that you're used to having. and still kind of keep your sanity. Like that's why a lot of people that follow, clean eating and they try to eat, salads and greens and, just the healthiest foods all the time. That's why they have to include like a cheat day here or there, and their cheat day gets out of control most of the time. Like they go crazy when they can finally have these foods because they've been like depriving themselves of it for so long, and that just like builds up in your head every time you resist that temptation for that. You're just adding and piling up the stress in your head, and then when you finally let yourself have those foods, you go crazy. Whereas if you work that into your macros with flexible dieting, and you say you have a cheeseburger one day of the week, or you work in a cookie after your dinner, you can, that allows you to still enjoy all those foods and not feel as restricted, and you can sustain that in the long term. And you don't have that urge to just go crazy and binge and have this crazy cheat day. You can kind of work in little cheat foods all throughout, and it's a way to kind of keep your sanity, keep things going for the long term. So
Yeah, so this totally turned into the Ask Tyler Johnston show.
yeah,
Q&A with
yeah.
Tyler. We
Yeah,
got
it's good that
two
we have
more questions.
interaction. Yeah.
We got two more lined up. Jeff kind of rephrased his. I haven't even read it, so hopefully it makes sense. He says, you base your diet on your ability to build and or maintain muscle and body fat percentage. When building and maintaining, do you follow any of on how to gain muscle in his interview with Tony? So if you haven't seen that interview, that question's going to be tough to answer, Jeff. And he just stepped off, too, because he was killing his Wi-Fi, watching it or his data, watching while he was driving. So, Jeff, hopefully you can maybe message Tyler and he can answer that for you. I don't know if you're going to be able to right now.
Or even if you post on like the Facebook page, I can get back to any of the questions in that aren't able to be answered right now.
Yeah. So we got a quick one, Juan. What do you think about the big breakfast, medium lunch, small dinner myth?
It really depends more on you individually. So certain people do better eating, 2 meals a day, 3 meals a day, and certain individuals do better eating 6 or 7 meals a day. So it's all that is really just dependent on like your personal preference, your lifestyle. If you're busy and you can't work in 7 meals a day, then trying to stick to that doesn't really make sense. And in terms of like meal frequency, it's essentially a myth. In the long term, there's no real benefit between having 3 meals a day versus 6 meals a day. There might be some benefit in terms of stabilizing like your blood sugar levels, or being able to digest foods, but that's going to depend on you personally. So whatever fits your lifestyle best is what you should go with. If you find you have the most energy and strength and feel the best when you have a really big breakfast and smaller lunch and dinner, go for it. If you like to have just little meals spread out all throughout the day, and that's how you feel best, do that. Whichever suits your lifestyle best and whichever you feel best with is what you should do. Same with dieting. Like the best diet is something that you can stick with. So I hope that answers that question then.
I think so, yeah. Alec had a quick question. He just asked, what are micronutrients? But we talked about them earlier. So if you want to rewatch the whole session, because I think he hopped on a little late, or just Google it, check it out. Obviously, you do your own research, everyone, when you're looking into things. Like Tyler's saying, different things are going to work for different people. So make sure you thoroughly research what you're going to do before you put yourself on like an intense plan. If you have any key points that you want to hit before we just keep bombarding you with questions, that would be good. And then I'll see if I can round up a couple questions for the end.
Yeah, let me just jump right into like how you guys can get started with this. And then yeah, if you have any other questions, I actually may not be able to answer them right now because I have to get to work very soon. But definitely leave the questions and I'll get back to everyone as best I can. But let's just get started, you know, how you guys can get started on the whole like flexible dieting and tracking your macros. So there's basically 5 steps. So the first is to figure out your calories. So calculate your maintenance calorie level. So like I said, there are some formulas in that for calculating that. Again, I'm gonna have this all in my book and everything. But for the time being, you can just Google calorie calculator. Something decent should show up in one of the first searches. Enter in your body stats, so age, height, weight, all those kinds of things, and it'll give you like your maintenance calorie level. And then if you want to lose weight, say you want to lose 1 pound a week, cut 500 calories off of that. If you want to gain weight and build muscle, I recommend only aiming for half a pound to a pound of gaining per week. So you would take your maintenance level, add 250 to 500 calories on top of that. So that's step 1. Calculate the calories and determine how many calories you need to have each day for your goals. So weight loss, weight gain, whichever. The second thing, number 2, is to calculate your macros. So I mentioned before, there's kind of different macro ratios that would be the easiest to get started with, which is just basing your macronutrients off of like the percentage of your total calories. So the like traditional bodybuilding macro ratio, for example, is 45% carbohydrates, 35% protein, and 20% fat. Now, if that's for like a traditional bodybuilding approach. If you're not someone who's exercising very frequently or not doing a lot of intense exercise, you probably don't need that high of amount of carbs. So doing something that's a bit more of a balanced ratio would probably be better for you. So say 35%, 35%, and 30% for protein, carbs, fats, or somewhere around there, keeping it relatively balanced between all 3 macronutrients would be the best for someone just getting started out. If you want to go with like a bodybuilding approach, if you want to be really lean and muscular, 45, 35, 20 is that traditional percentage. So there's tons of different kind of ratios you can follow. I recommend starting out with something that's basically pretty balanced and then kind of adjusting from there. So once you decide whatever percentage you want to go with, the next thing to do is to calculate the actual amount of each macronutrient that you should have each day. So like I said before, each macronutrient has a caloric value. So protein and carbs each have 4 calories and fat has 9 calories. So if you want, say your goal is to lose weight, and you've calculated that in order to lose a pound a week you need to eat 2,000 calories a day. So to figure out how many like carbs and fats in that you need, you would take your percentage, so say 40% of those calories you want to be carbs. You would multiply the 2,000 calories by 40%, which would be um, 800 calories, if I'm calculating that right. And then because each gram of carbs has 4 calories in it, you would just divide that by 4. So essentially, to have 40% of your carbs on 2,000 calorie diet, you'd be having 200 grams of carbs per day. And then the same with protein. Say you wanted it to be 30%, you do the exact same thing, multiply 30% by 2,000 calories, you would get 600, divide that by 4, you'd get 150 grams of protein, and then the fats would make up the last 30% as well. So the fats are the one that's different since it's 9 calories each. So you'd take the 2,000 calories, multiply it by that 30%, and you'd still get 600, but then you'd have to divide that by 9 to get the amount of grams of fat that you would need. So it would be, somewhere around 60 grams. That's not completely accurate, but just doing it roughly in my head. So if you're having 2,000 calories and you're having 40% carbs, 30% protein, 30% fat, it would be, somewhere around 200 grams of carbs, 150 protein, and like 55, 60 fat. So those are the first 2 steps. Calculate your calories, calculate your macros. Step 3, which I'm sure a lot of you are probably had questions about, how do you know, what macros are in certain foods, and like, how do you track all this? Do you have to read the label every time? And the answer is no. That would be just ridiculous and a headache, and that'd be way too much work. So there's apps that you can get for your phone or on the computer or whatever that are macro trackers. The 2 most popular would be MyFitnessPal and Lose It. Both of them are free apps, so you can get them. They should work on pretty much every phone, and you can get them online as well. And all you do is search, MyFitnessPal or Lose It. Get one of those apps. You can do it like right now. It takes like 30 seconds. So, if you don't do it right now, definitely when this is done, just get it. When you're trying to start something and you're setting a goal and you want to achieve something, the best thing to do is just take that first step right away. That'll help to build that momentum and get you going, on the right path. And these are the momentum sessions, right? So we want to start building the momentum right away. So yeah, just search Lose It or MyFitnessPal, or if you have another macro tracker that you like, use that. On the website, it'll explain exactly how you can use it, and essentially they have like food databases in there, so you can search different foods. You can even search restaurant foods, like say you get a cheeseburger at McDonald's, you can search that on there and it'll give you all of the macronutrients for that. And you just simply say, for breakfast I had an egg McMuffin, and you go search egg McMuffin, find the one, McDonald's egg McMuffin, and add that to your breakfast. And then you just do that for all of your meals. Eventually you can build like your own food database. So if you're eating this, similar kinds of foods, you can just quickly pick one of those from your own list. And then they even have barcode scanners and stuff on there too. So anything that has a barcode, you can just scan it with your phone, and it'll read the nutrition info on there and enter it into the app for you. So it makes it super simple, super easy, and it'll be tough to get used to at first, but it, like anything, it just kind of takes some practice, and it takes getting into the habit of it and the routine, and then eventually it'll just be like second nature. Like I track my food every single day, all of my meals, and I can track my entire day in like 5 or 10 minutes. So it's not something that's like, a crazy chore. It might feel complicated at first when you're getting used to using it and that, but just, stick with it. Do it for the next, 2 weeks, do it for the next 3 weeks, whatever. just do it consistently, and you'll find it gets easier and easier and quicker. So that's step 3. Get a macro tracker. Step 4 is optional, but it'll increase the accuracy. And it's just grab a food scale. So, a food scale is the best way to know exactly how much you're getting of each food. If you're just going by like things like cups or tablespoons or whatever, certain foods will weigh more or less, even if and different measurements will be different. So say a cup is supposed to be 100 grams or whatever, usually more like 120 or whatever, but anyways, say a cup is supposed to be 100 grams, and this one, you weigh it, it's 100 grams, but this one is also 1 cup, you weigh it, and it's like 80 grams. Obviously, it's not going to be the most accurate. So, by grabbing a food scale, they're like $20, $30 at like Walmart or Canadian Tire, wherever. Canadian Tire. Most of you people aren't in Canada. Anyway, any sort of department store, you can pick up a food scale, and that'll just allow you to be a bit more accurate with it. It's not absolutely necessary. You can still get amazing results by doing your best estimates and using just like measuring cups, that sort of thing. And then so that's step 4, food scale. Step 5 is just measure your progress and adjust as you need. So like we said, as you start, if your goal is to lose weight, as you start losing weight, eventually you're going to need to lower your calorie amount to keep losing that same amount of weight, or increase your amount of exercise, or that sort of thing. And what gets measured gets managed. What gets managed gets improved. So just measure things as you go. I recommend like weighing in maybe once a week or something. Take pictures. That's a really big thing. If you're wanting to change your body composition, do like a body transformation, take a photo of what you're looking like right now and keep that. And then like every week, every 2 weeks, take some new photos that are in like those same sort of poses, that same place, and you'll start to see the changes in your body. Because changing your body composition is something that's really slow and gradual, and it happens over time. So a lot of the times, if we're just looking in the mirror, it's really hard to see the differences. But if you have 2 pictures side by side and you've been sticking with it and you've been working hard, if you look at the picture from week 1 and week 4, you're going to see a huge difference. So that's really one of the best ways I recommend keeping your progress. And then, like anything, you're always wanting to improve. You're always wanting to find ways that you can improve things and do better. So by measuring your progress, you'll be able to see what's working, what's not, and you'll be able to adjust and keep things going in the long term. That's pretty much everything for now. Again, like I said, I've written a book on all of this, and it's going to be coming out really soon. I actually just got the website set up for like the whole like coming soon page. So if you go to iifymbook.com, you can actually sign your email up there to be updated, when that's going to be released and everything. I'll obviously keep you guys all in the know with that. But that's going to explain everything that I talked about here in more depth and detail. And then there's a whole section in there on like the psychology of eating, why we tend to like overeat, and certain things like that. And there's also a section on success, setting yourself up for success, and some real world examples to really help you set a plan up and make sure you're going to be successful with that. But that's pretty much everything in terms of flexible dieting. So to recap those 5 steps to get started: calculate your calories, 1, calculate your macros, 2, get a macro tracker, 3, get a food scale if you want, 4, and 5 is just measure your progress and adjust. So that's everything for now. I'll let you kind of wrap it up, I guess, Sergio. Or?
Yeah, that's awesome. So usually now we're like, if anyone has any questions, feel free to post.
Yeah.
But they were going on the whole way through. Huang again said, thanks, Tyler. We had a bunch of viewers. Lots of people have been messaging me saying it was awesome. It'll be uploaded after we get off so people can watch. And next week is going to be the final session for this year. I started these from the very first week of the last GYLS, pretty much every week until that now. So you got the honor of being the final session. You got to close it out. And it was a really good session, man. Really informative. You nailed all the questions. So it was great. Don't think we have any more questions. So you can wrap it up. And yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so I do have to get heading out, unfortunately. So I know some of you probably have some other questions or whatever that you might want to ask. If you do have any questions, definitely either post on, even the YouTube link, post on the Facebook group, whatever. I'll get back to them and, I'll answer you guys. Or if you have something that, I don't know, you don't feel as comfortable sharing with everyone kind of thing, you can always send me like a private message or whatever on Facebook. But a lot of people you'll find will have similar questions in that. So even if you're unsure about it, it might be beneficial to just post it in, the Facebook page or whatever, and other people would be able to benefit from the answer to that too. But again, it's up to you. So I hope you guys all enjoyed, this quick talk on flexible dieting. It's a lot of stuff to cover and a lot of stuff to take in, especially in like, half an hour to an hour that we had. But it's something that I think is really important and beneficial to, your health, your fitness, your well-being. Your health is something that you need in order to, be successful in anything else in life. If you're not healthy, you can't really give your all to anything. So, it's something that's important to me. It's something that, I follow. It's something that I believe in. And I'm glad I was able to share with you guys. I hope you guys got some value from this. And again, if you have any other questions, just feel free to post or send me a message and we'll get back to you. So that's everything for now.